There has never been a time in my life where a president was more disconnected from the American people than we see today.
That was former Vice President Mike Pence not talking about former President Donald Trump, who nearly got him killed on January 6th when rioters were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," because he just refused to unilaterally hand over the election to Donald Trump. Now, he's not talking about Trump, he's talking about Biden because of inflation. And he argues, well, Biden is super disconnected from the American people. Again, forgetting the fact that Trump wanted to essentially throw out the votes of more than 75 million Americans. But I want to get to the other reality, which is Trump's false or misleading claims total 30,573 over 4 years. That is a headline from the Washington Post. They were fact checking Donald Trump throughout his presidency, and that's the number that they landed on. But I mean, aside from January 6th, aside from the election lies, I mean, Trump said that you can use UV light to cure yourself of COVID. He said that you can inject your lungs with disinfectant as a treatment. The guy was absolutely insane. But Pence says, according to this headline from Fox News, he won't let Dems use January 6th to distract from their failed agenda. And he even goes so far as to praise Donald Trump on his record. And I have some quotes to get to in just a moment, but I want to bring you in right away, David, because it just blows my mind how Pence gets referred to as an American hero because he certified the election the correct way. Again, just doing the bare minimum, that is his job. But in reality, he's a coward.
It's not an act of courage to speak to Larry Kudlow. Larry Kudlow was on your White House team of economic advisors. He's giving you softballs on this interview. Larry Kudlow says, it seems to me like Joe Biden has offered more mistruths than anybody. And at that point, Mike Pence changes it to say, yeah, he's disconnected. Well, he could have said, no, actually, we shouldn't get into talking about fact or truth. Let's just talk about I mean, there's so many different ways that Mike Pence could have pivoted away from that and protected himself and not faced all these charges of hypocrisy, but he's not that strong of a politician. And so there's Pence it is so predictable for Mike Pence to just heap scorn on Joe Biden, to use buzzwords that are clear buzzwords to the right that don't mean anything to anybody who's got half a brain. That's what Mike Pence is all about.
No, I mean, you're exactly right about that. And the quotes in his Fox News interview are even worse than what you saw with Larry Kudlow. Look, we can get into a lengthy discussion about inflation. Obviously, the right wing loves to lie about it. I'm not a huge fan of the leadership that we've seen from Joe Biden, but to blame inflation squarely on Joe Biden is in and of itself a massive lie. I mean, Donald Trump repeated over and over again that the Federal Reserve needed to keep interest rates artificially low. And what did that do? You guys think inflation is new? No, there has been inflation related to asset prices for some time now. And we're actually experiencing a correction in the economy as a result of that. The Federal Reserve printed money, also gave easy access to money. And what did banks and private equity firms do? And corporations for that matter, they artificially inflated the shares for their companies by doing corporate stock buybacks. Private equity firms bought up the available housing, which was limited inventory to begin with, and that inflated housing prices. Inflation has been a disaster for quite some time, but when it's assets that are being inflated, the rich love it because the rich are overwhelmingly invested in those assets. Now inflation is starting to impact things like food, obviously gas because of Russia and the invasion of Ukraine. But to again, blame that squarely on Joe Biden is ridiculous. I said I wasn't gonna get into a long explanation. I did it anyway. Well, did you want to comment on that, David?
No, I was just gonna say, look, I mean, if you want to talk about disconnected, the Republican Party has been disconnected from the concerns of most Americans for a long time. It's rich of Vice President Pence to now say, Joe Biden's disconnected because working class people may be hurting because of inflation that was essentially caused by Donald Trump and by corporate America. But okay, it's a cheap political shot. That's what Mike Pence is all about.
Exactly. Well, I want to get to some of the other comments or quotes from Pence during this Fox News interview. He said January 6th was a tragic day. He admits it was a tragic day. And I know we did our duty, but I will always be proud of our record. And I am not going to allow the Democrats to use that tragic day to distract attention from their failed agenda or to demean the intentions of 74 million Americans who rallied behind our cause. As for his relationship with Trump during the administration, Pence told Fox News, quote, "We were very close friends. We parted very amicably on January 20th, not buying it. I don't know if the president and I will ever see eye to eye on my duties on January 6th, but in the aftermath of that tragic day, we sat down and we talked through it. And then we rolled up our sleeves and finished the final weeks of our administration working together." And he even praised the former president. Pence said he will always be proud to have served alongside him. Okay, so, and he was also asked like, "Hey, would you vote for Donald Trump?" And he wouldn't say no. He just refused to say no, David.
I think this is Pence knows that he's in a pickle in terms of the Republican primary because the Trump voters hate him because Donald Trump made it clear that they should hate him because he wouldn't help Donald Trump steal the election. He's not as charismatic as say Governor DeSantis in Florida or some of the other Republicans that are considering a run. So Mike Pence is sort of in no man's land. He doesn't really have a natural base that is there for him. So somehow he has to try to kiss up to Donald Trump, but at the same time acknowledge that what he was being asked to do was perhaps against the law, but certainly unconstitutional. And that's not, Mike Pence is just sort of spinning and doing cartwheels and verbal gymnastics to somehow figure out what can I do to get an audience, to get some voters in the 2024 primaries. And the answer is there's probably nothing he can do. He's toast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and look, one final thing I'll say, and you guys make sure you include this in the video. Look, when we covered the January 6th hearings that specifically focused on Mike Pence, and like you have Democrats talking about what a hero Mike Pence was. I something that kept me up at night, and I'm glad I finally have an opportunity to say it, was even on our show, he was referred to as a hero, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. He is not a hero. I think this interview is evidence to how much of a coward he is, how his own political aspirations take priority over the American people. And yeah, on that day, he did the right thing, but he also did what was expected of him. That was his job. How many of us do what's expected of us at work or toward our friends and family, and then get applauded for doing the bare minimum? No, you don't get applauded for doing the bare minimum. He is not a hero. Again, he did the right thing. And I honestly, I get disgusted every time anyone refers to him as a hero. He's not. He enabled Trump during the administration, and he continues to enable Trump today.
I agree that he's not a hero. Also, heroes don't have to call former Vice President Dan Quayle to get permission to uphold their duties and uphold the Constitution. The fact that, we now know based on a couple of books that there was Vice President Pence pushing back against Dan Quayle saying, "But you don't know the position that I'm in." No, he should have just said, "What do I do about this crazy president that I work for? I can't do this, help me." Instead, it was like, "Well, is there anything I can do? Mr. Vice President Quayle, is there anything I can do?" And Quayle's having to explain, "No, you can't." Well, that's not exactly a hero. That's not somebody who's got much courage.
Exactly.